Welcome back to the Better Everyday Podcast, where we are unlocking our best self one episode at a time. My name is David Garcia, and this is my beautiful co-host, Grace Garcia. And for a second time this year, we are back. How are you?
I'm feeling way better, like night and day from last week.
Yes, if you guys are following us on social media, or at least on Instagram, we let you guys know that last week, we could not post a video because my beautiful wife over here got knocked out by the flu bad. She was bad for many days.
And it wasn't just the flu. So when I'm stressed, or if my daughter accidentally bumps my head, which she does a lot because we sleep together, or if I accidentally bite my lip, I get fuegos, which I think the proper term in English is like canker sores. And I had like two.
That sounds so gross.
I had two massive ones on the same side. So like talking was annoying. Like eating was annoying.
Granted, my wife says they're massive, but they're about like 2 millimeters
David,
big.
they were you didn't even see these. They were massive, about 2 centimeters.
Nah, I've had those before, and they're annoying. They're annoying.
You look them up, and they're open nerve endings or something like that.
Yeah, and so my wife, Grace, she wanted to power through. I was like, no, we're going to take the night off. I'm like, you need to rest, because she was bad with the flu. Like you had a fever, your body was aching, you had sniffles, you had a cough. Like what didn't you have? You had it all.
Yeah.
And so I told her, hey, take the night off. And she was like, no. And then she felt guilty and like, no, we can't do that. We're known for our consistency. And I'm like, well, if we're known for our consistency already, well, guess what? We're going to be known for loving each other and making sure that we put each other as our priority. And so, we decided to take the week off, and I think it helped. I mean,
for sure. The next day I felt better. I think I need a good rest.
Yeah, hey, if you guys have ever been sick and you guys don't know, all you need is good sleep, good fluids, which is a lot of water. You don't really need meds. Make sure that you have your vitamins. Vitamin C is always good for the immune system. And you just got to wait the 5 to 10 days.
Yeah.
I was about to go into like a little pet peeve that I have, but we're not going to go there in regards to running to the doctor every single time you're sick. But yeah, now we're back, healthy, ready to go. And for you faithful listeners, you guys know that last episode that we had, we talked about self-reflection. And I want to continue going on not that specific topic, but a similar topic, and kind of like piggybacking off of that. I talked a little bit about it last week, or the last episode that we had. So we talked about self-reflection, and we talked about, for a lot of us, self-reflection is really hard. Because self-reflection means you got to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly within you. And not a lot of people do that. And I talked a little bit about there's some of us that, grow up being conditioned to perform, which means you get it right or you don't get what you want. And usually what it is that we want at the core of it all is love.
Yeah.
Love might take the form of admiration, words of encouragement. It might take the face of just being hugged and embraced. It might just be accepted. But in between all that, the gist is that we all want love, right? And when you're conditioned to perform, you either get it right or you get none of it. And if you're conditioned that way, you're kind of, your brain, your heart kind of gets restructured in the sense of, I can't make a single mistake, because a single mistake will mean I am bad. I am not worth it. I'm a mess up, so on and so forth. And I like to do this example. If you grab a piece of paper, which I don't have right now, but you're going to see it right now, and you put a little dot in the middle, then you ask anybody, you hold that piece of paper with that dot in the middle, and you ask anybody, what do you see? I would say almost 10 times out of 10, the person will respond a dot on a page. And when you see it like that, a lot of us see the same thing, a dot in the middle of a white page. But you have like another side of the coin that says, well, why'd you mention the dot and you didn't mention the white paper? Why do you just say, I see a dot, right? And the ones that are conditioned to perform usually think the same way about our own lives, where if somebody were to ask us, what do you see within you? And you start naming everything that's wrong. Because when you're conditioned to perform, you're likely to have a mentality of, I think you've said it on the podcast before, that I see it's either black or white. There is no middle ground. And so for me, if I mess up, I'm a mess up. That's the dot in the middle. I don't even acknowledge the good.
Yeah.
Right? And it is very important for us to acknowledge the whole picture. And that's why it kind of correlates with the self-reflection, because in self-reflection, you need to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. What are you doing good at? What are you not doing so good at? What is really terrible? What needs work? What do I need to prioritize to do? How can I give myself kudos, right? And so I talked a little bit about it last episode, where I gave the example of Psalms 23:5. And for me, when I interpret that verse, it's the very first two lines that really hit home for me, which is, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. And when you look at that line right there, it is almost the same as self-reflection. There is good, a table prepared for you, and there's the bad in the presence of my enemies, right? And I believe, at least for me in my life, that verse right there is so key in us embracing the reality of life. That in every instant of your life, there is good, there is bad, and there is even ugly. The problem with myself, I don't know if you want to call this a testimony or whatever, but the problem with myself is I never received rejection really well. And so what I used to do, and I did it a lot, now that I'm, going through therapy and all that, I'm realizing that I did it a lot. I disassociated, which basically means I took what I wanted out of my situation and I painted it, put a little smiley face on it, and I said, it's all good. And I ignored all of the bad. And that for me was a survival mechanism, because I did not know how to process the ugly. I did not know how to process rejection. I did not know how to process fear. I did not know how to process not receiving love. And the list goes on and on. And because of that, I basically, put a bunch of bandages, carpets, whatever you want to call it. I made whatever my situation was as pretty as possible. Mm-hmm. And basically what I did was, I am only going to see the good, positive. And I've always rooted myself in that positivity. I remember my mom used to get mad at me. It's like, David, why are you the way that you are? You're so chill. You're so relaxed. I'd always tell my mom, Mom, relax. It would drive her up the wall.
I'm annoyed thinking about it because Elijah tries to pull it on me.
Yeah, I'm just relax. It's all going to work out. And growing up, I always had the thought of I'm just a positive person. I could even say I believe that God was always going to handle everything and blah, 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 and even when I went through terrible times, storms, disassociated, took away all the ugly, or I took the ugly, and the same thing that we talked about last time. It's an ugly tattoo that you got. The tattoo artist messed up. Mm. You just go to a better tattoo artist and you draw on top of it. And guess what? You have a majestic tattoo. But the ugly tattoo is still under that pretty one that got on top of it. So same thing. I would just paint on top of my picture and be like, it's a wonderful picture. My thing was always, I went through hard times, but it made me a stronger person. I went through hard times and it made me a faithful person. I went through hard times. It made me trust God even more. And so I just kept painting this picture of, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's all beautiful. It's never going to be bad. It's all beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I disassociated. And now I'm starting to realize I never looked at the good, the bad, and the ugly. And because I didn't do that, now that I'm going through all this therapy, now everything that I disassociated with, everything that I ignored, everything that I threw under a rug, everything that I threw into a box, everything that I painted a different picture, now guess what? I'm taking it out of the box. I'm looking at the real picture now. And now I have to process all those feelings that I disassociated from. Mm. And if you're anything like me, you hate that because it's a crappy feeling. Yeah. And one of my fears, I told my therapist, was I'm trying to save myself from being in a pit that I dug myself and I don't know how to get out. And I think that's the reason why I disassociated most of my life, because I didn't want to be in a pit, because I didn't know if I could get out. And I mean, you could call that pit, depression. Maybe I was trying to avoid depression at all costs. And so my point is that when you look at this verse, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. It presents the reality of life. What is the reality of life? There is good and there is bad. Now, at the time that this episode is coming out, I will let you guys know if it's not the Monday, it might be the Tuesday or the Wednesday or that same week. But we will come out with an Instagram post, and I think it'll be on TikTok, that kind of shows what our thought process is. Because one of the reasons why we're doing this episode particularly is obviously to help you guys be better every single day. But also, we had an idea of having a journal entry. Now, we don't have a journal made yet, but my wife has been nonstop just poking me and make the journal. So sooner rather than later, we will have a journal on Amazon that you could buy if you want. But if you want to start, let's say today, the moment that you hear this episode, you can start this today.
But bug David, please, so that he has more of a fire and it's not just me.
Yeah. It is a good idea. I was like hesitant about it, to make a whole journal, when I feel like you guys can just listen to this right along and then just start your journal entries. But I have found that journal entries are very helpful, very, very helpful. And so I kind of put two and two together. I'm like, I need to process everything that I disassociated from. And so what I started to do is I started to write down the reality of my life. And the reality of my life is that there are some parts that are good. There are some parts that are bad and some parts that are ugly. But not only that, I also started to identify the enemies that were around me. And why that's important, and I've said it before, is because if you don't know who you're fighting, you're going to lose the fight every single time. So if you can identify the enemies that are around you, that is super important. Do you have anything to add before I keep going? Because
I think I'm so proud of you, because I think you've gone through this process. And even before going through this process, I want to let people know, if they don't already know, I think close people around you might know, but those who maybe aren't as close, like you've been bringing up this particular verse, I think, I want to say since like before Elijah was born. So, or maybe around that time. So maybe like 7 years. Mm-hmm. And so this isn't something that, boom, you just had it like a month ago, or even while in therapy. Like, I truly believe that God has gifted you this verse for a reason. And God is a God of like time and process. Like, he isn't just gonna, boom, give you that revelation then and there. It is beautiful how revealing it's been like in every season. And you had a beautiful message 7 years ago that is still impactful till this day, and just how God is like refining it. Like, it's the same message, it's the same person, but seeing in the years what it's done as you're going through this journey has been beautiful to witness. And so I'm super excited and proud that it's gone to this moment. And I think this is just the journey. I think there's even more after this, but I want people to know that this is not just this month or this therapy. This has been like, whether you've been intentional or not, like something that God has been working you for years.
And the beautiful part about this podcast is that there are two very different people being co-hosts in this. And so because of that, before I keep going on, I want to ask you, do you relate to any of this? How would you apply this to your life? Because again, you're different. So I'm speaking to a certain type of person. You might be speaking to another type of person. Like, how does this ring for you in your life?
I feel like we kind of touched base, like when you come post therapy sessions and we kind of have our debriefs, that we're not that different. I think our personalities are different, but then how our inner mind works. Because I'm realizing like, whoa, maybe I avoid my emotions. Like, maybe it's easy. So it might be a human thing. Like, just how you said, just to cope through life. Like, that's really tough to always carry your heart on your sleeve, how they call it. So I think it is super helpful, because even me, I can think of maybe how you said, like, for me, it's easy to think of the good or maybe just the bad, right? Like, either or. But to really be intentional of like, okay, what are the enemies? Like, I don't think that's something that comes natural to me. Like, oh, let me identify this. So I think that's super helpful, because whether you're on more, and I think it varies, right? Like, TMI, but if I'm on my period, I'm probably going to be more negative. Easy to look at the enemies around me. And then if I'm not, I'm probably like, oh, God has been so good. This is the good. But it's not like every day where I'm thinking, okay, good, bad, and the enemies, good, bad, and the enemies. And I think that's something that we should be practicing, because there's always good. And the reality is we live in this world, and it's the physical world, but we believe we also live in the spiritual world, and there are enemies constantly around us. And so just to ignore it, I feel like this is kind of like how you said, like in a game plan, right? Like a game plan, a war plan. And so you're being intentional of like, okay, this is what I have to work on. This is the enemies that I have to watch out for, that my weaknesses, like I see a pattern, and so being intentional, we've always said, like, if we're not moving forward, we're moving backward, and that's what's going to get us better. And I don't think that comes natural to a lot of people. Like, you can either, again, be more positive or be more negative, but to really paint the full picture in one day or one like reflection, I think could be super duper beneficial.
What's an area in your life do you feel like that was really tough, you disassociated, and then you had to deal with the emotions after?
Oh, my mom's death, 100%. I mentioned it in the grief podcast, where everyone hears the baby feels what you feel. And so I was immediately like, well, I want my baby to come out good. Like, I don't want him to feel stressed or anything. And so I had like a reason to not associate with my emotions. And mind you, I conceived either like the month of or after. I found out 1 month after my mom passed away. So it was fresh. And yeah, I ignored it during my pregnancy. Like, hormones came up. I blamed it on the hormones, but I was angry. I was hurt. And so I lashed out at you constantly during my pregnancy. And then after, with like postpartum blues, I didn't even know that was a thing, but something I'm like, I'm okay. And it wasn't until a year after Elijah where I was like, yeah, maybe I messed up and maybe I need to go to therapy and fix this all together.
And how did therapy help you?
how you said it, you lay it out all on the table. Like, here's this little box. Let's put it all on the table and go through it.
Yeah.
Like, and there's certain things in there that you had no idea you even thought of. You're just like, what? And realizations, they're like, wow, that's why I thought this way, or this was hurtful and damaging and I didn't even notice. And so how can I move forward now with a different mindset? But yeah, you just bear your thoughts out.
And it's crazy that those moments, like losing a mother or having a rough childhood or, being conditioned a certain way, like it really shapes your mind.
Yeah.
It really shapes the way that you act, the way that you react, the way that you respond. Like it's crazy. Like when you really reflect and you're like, oh yeah, that all stems from that one moment or all those moments that I got the same feeling, whatever. And it's so important for us to see the full picture. Like it's I will tell you from experience that you can only survive so long disconnecting and disassociating. And one of the reasons why I started going to therapy is felt like I kept hitting like a ceiling and I couldn't break through. And it was like, I can't go any further. Like I'm stuck. And I think I said it here before, like I didn't want to feel like the weakest link in the family, especially being supposed to be the leader of the family. Like I'm like, I need to figure this out. I need to. And so I decided to go to therapy. And now I'm starting to realize a lot of things and why I kept hitting that ceiling. And it was like, buddy, you have all this stuff that you're dragging. You thought you were not dragging because you're Mr. Optimistic and Mr. like, we can make it through anything, Mr. Champion Spirit.
Yeah.
But some of that champion spirit, or a lot of how I was just a front, really, a mask. And it got me this far. And I couldn't go any farther. And you could say like it was God. It was like, okay, it's time to deal with all those things.
Yeah.
You got to look back at it. And it's been tough. But what is the important part? And why am I bringing this verse up? And why am I bringing up you got to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly? The reason is because you have to be brave enough and courageous enough to look at the actual picture, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What is important after that, though, because you paint the realistic picture. This is my life. There is no perfect. There is good. For example, I'm doing great as a husband. We're thriving. We've gone through hard stuff, but I feel like we're getting better. We're loving each other. We're feeding each other love. And I could say the bad is I'm not doing so good as a father. I'm dropping the ball. Maybe snapping on my kids. I don't have patience. And then the ugly might be I'm going through temptations and I keep messing up, right? That could be the reality of your life. And if somebody were to ask you, it's almost like when somebody asks you like, hey, how are you doing? In passing, you go, oh, great.
Yeah.
Boom, mask, like I'm fine. Are you fine though? No. You probably have a good, bad, and the ugly. So same thing, like who wants to say like, oh, hey, this is my ugly right here. Like come look at it. Nobody. Especially if you've been conditioned to perform, you for sure lock it down. You don't show that to nobody.
Yeah.
And so why is that so important? Because the next step is what are you going to choose to focus on? Because when you look at that picture of you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, picture it. There is a table. You could paint a picture of a Thanksgiving dinner made for you. God made that for you. But for whatever reason, he decided, hey, let's put some enemies up in here. And the only reason I could think, the only reason I can interpret that why there's enemies around it, because God is like, I can't present you rainbows and butterflies when your life is not going to be rainbows and butterflies. The reality is there's going to be blessings that I have ready for you, but there's going to be enemies around you as well. And what is important, and you don't like when I say what is the purpose of the enemies, right? So let's just say, what are the enemies around you trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a battle in that picture of there's a table presented before you, Thanksgiving dinner made for you, but in the presence of your enemies. There is a battle without there actually being battle, but there's a battle happening in your mind at that point. It is, what am I going to focus on? Because if you've looked at a telescope, if you've looked at a microscope, the moment that you put your eye in that, whatever it is that you were looking at just got bigger. That's the whole purpose of those things, right? And so what is important is, what are you choosing to focus on? Are you going to focus on the table that has been prepared before you by God?
Yeah.
Or are you going to focus on the enemies? And what are the enemies? Do you think the enemies are just standing there just like, oh yeah, like, lucky guy, this guy's got Thanksgiving dinner. That's cool. We're just going to watch him eat. No, like the enemies, all they're trying to do, and you could identify the enemy. You can identify the enemy as pride. You can identify it as fear. And fear has different other subcategories of it. You can see it as an enemy of rejection, the enemy of what? Ego. What else?
Self-loathing.
The enemy of depression. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to throw things at you. Granted, they do not have power until you give them power. And the only power that they can have over you is that they can steal your focus. Because they're trying to distract you. They don't want you to focus on that table in front of you. They don't want you to focus on the blessings. They don't want you to focus on the good. They don't want you to focus on, in the midst of the storm, God's still faithful. They don't want you to do that. They want you to focus on them, because the moment that you focus on them, they become a Goliath so big that he stopped the whole nation. So big that he made a whole nation fearful, a whole army nation fearful of him.
Yeah.
And so that's what they're trying to do. And so you have a choice. You have a mental battle in your mind. What am I going to focus on? Am I going to focus on the good, or am I going to focus on the enemy? And whatever it is that you choose is going to dictate your emotions. It's going to dictate your actions. It's going to dictate what you think tomorrow is going to look like. It's going to dictate everything in your life. And then the moment that you, let's say, focus on the enemy, guess what happens to the picture of the table? It's still there, but it's out of focus. So it's blurry. It's hard to see. You ever been in a moment like that where you're in the midst of a storm and you focus on, oh my gosh, how am I going to get out of this? Fear. Oh my gosh, I don't know if I have what it takes. Oh my gosh, like, where's God? God prepared a table right before you. It's fuzzy because all you're focusing on is the enemy. And so that is one of the most important parts of our thought process within this verse, right? Anything you want to add on that?
I think those are great principles, like for just how you said, daily life. And I think some of us have practiced it. It's like gratitude, right? Like there's always something to enjoy. You either sit down at the table and you enjoy the dinner, or you're too worried, scared, freaked out on the enemies that the food is there, but you let it get cold. You can't enjoy it. And I think God, in his mercifulness and great grace, has prepared a table for all of us. And he's just asking, do you trust me to sit there while they surround you? Are you going to be at peace? And when we think about it, whether it's we don't have enough money for rent, whether it's what's happening in the political climate, there's a lot of things that we can easily look at and say, this is scary. The reality is there's a lot of things we can write down and say, I'm going to choose to enjoy this right here that God has given me, because he gifted it to you. Like, all good things come from God. And so enjoy it. Like, there's always going to be, how you said, things around you. Life is not going to be perfect. So why are we wasting our energy on that and letting our dinner get cold? Like, it's there. Like, just sit and enjoy in the moment. Yeah.
And so, again, it's important in this if you're going to do it, I would encourage you guys to do it. But if you're going to do it, what you're going to do is on the first lines, you're going to put the reality. And so in that reality, what did or does your day look like? My day looks like, for example, I'm waking up. I have my family next to me. I have to go to work. I have to take on XYZ challenges later. And so that's the reality.
Yeah.
And so you start identifying, okay, how do I feel about all these things? Work, I have to put up with my boss. What enemy can I identify there? Pride. And pride's trying to take over my thoughts, my heart. I need to work it out with my boss, right? My wife, me and her got into a discussion last night, and now my pride wants to take over and just drag this on and have her apologize to me. That's reality.
Yeah.
That is reality. As much as some of us might not want to show it, that's reality. My son hurt my feelings last night, and I don't know how to deal with it. Write it all down. And it's important for you to write it down, because as you're writing it down, you're processing the good, the bad, and the ugly. And while you're writing all that down, write how it makes you feel. And when it makes you feel, you'll start identifying the good. You're going to start identifying good things like gratitude. So good things of that come from God, really. Gratitude, joyfulness, peace. But when you're writing all the bad stuff, you're going to start identifying enemies as well. I feel fearful. I don't know if I'm going to make ends meet. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make the car payment. I don't know if I'm going to be able to feed my kids. I don't know if I'm going to be able to step up as a father because I never really had a father figure. I don't know if I'm going to be able to step up as a mother because I didn't have much of a loving mother. I have a fear that I'm going to snap on my kids. I have a fear that life is overwhelming. Like all these things, you start writing them out and you start processing them. And then underneath that, you start identifying the enemies. And it's important, again, that you identify them, because then you start doing what we talked about last episode, which is a self-reflection. Where are all these enemies? Where are all these feelings coming from? Fear of, I'm not going to be able to make ends meet. A lot of us, that fear comes from childhood, seeing how our parents struggled, seeing all the mistakes our parents made, and us thinking that we're going to repeat the same thing, or that we're going to live the same life that they did, that we don't know how to do it better.
Yeah.
You start self-reflecting, like, where is this coming from? And then, so you have the reality, the enemies. Then you start on the next paragraph, you put focus. And that is when you start making an intentional choice of, what am I going to focus on? I'm going to focus on that I woke up this morning and I have my family here. I might have gotten in a discussion with my wife. I might have gotten hurt by my son, but that I have him here, I am grateful that I have him here. I'm grateful that I woke up next to my wife. I'm grateful that I have a son, that I have an opportunity to mend that relationship. I am grateful that I have breath in my lungs. I'm grateful that I have a job and I get paid well. And although that there is challenges with it, I'm grateful because, well, especially in my position, and this is like real life, this isn't an example anymore. I feel like I didn't deserve that position, but I have it, you know? So I'm grateful that I have that position. You start writing down what you choose to focus on. Because again, you have the choice. You're going to focus on the table or you're going to focus on the enemies. Whatever it is that you focus on is going to become bigger and it's going to become louder. And so after you choose what you focus on, then the next step is the next part of the verse, which says, you anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. And when you focus on what God has prepared for you, God doesn't give you a little bit. He always gives you a lot. And it starts with his love that is never ending. And so when you focus on that love, you have no other choice but to overflow with love when you accept that for yourself. And so the next part is you write the blessings. Here are all the blessings that God has given me. And that's like, imagine you starting off your day with that journal. By the time that you're at the end, you're like, I'm ready for this day.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, obviously this is not a like a fix-all type of thing. But like it's kind of like what you've said. Like the moment that you started starting your day with God, 30 minutes of reading the Bible and studying it and writing in your prayer journal, like you say, like you're ready to like kill the day. And yeah, like it's not like perfect. Like you still have moments of like, oh man, these kids, you know, like at school and blah blah blah. But like I could vouch for you where that you've become way more positive. You've become way more peaceful. You become way more joyful. And so, yeah, it's just like another journal idea, I guess, of, and really touches home with me because again, I disassociated so much. And now I am trying to break that cycle where now I'm trying to process every single one of those feelings in real time. Because I realize that it's important, because when you don't do that, sooner or later, they're going to come knocking and saying, hey, buddy, you remember us? You got to deal with us now.
Yeah.
And you could deal with a little bit or you can deal with a lot. It's your choice. And right now I'm dealing with a lot.
And this is good training, not only for us to get in the habit of this thought process. And hopefully, maybe we don't need the journal. Maybe it's just automatically like we have a thought and we're like, okay, what is the reality of this? What's the enemies? Okay, what's the goodness that I see through this? Like it can be a rhythm. It can start being a rhythm in our life. Because I think that's what David did. He was like, this is the truth. Like, I am in a war right now. Like people are out to get me. It's a horrible feeling, like crying out to God, like, God, are you going to deliver us? But he decided, he always ended like, okay, what am I focusing on? That God is faithful, that God is good, that he is worthy to be praised. And so that's a lifestyle change. But I think not only does it help us reframe our mind and make it a healthy rhythm in our life, but it hopefully can also teach us, okay, now that we know how to process our feelings, how can we help our kids in real time process theirs so that hopefully they don't, when they get older, be like, well, I don't know how to think like this. They have to learn it themselves.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can tell it's easier said than done, because when they're in the moment, you're just like, you get overwhelmed. But saying, okay, the reality is you feel like this. Okay, that's the reality. What are we feeling, right? Pinpoint the emotion. Like I'm feeling anger. I'm feeling frustration. All right, but what's the truth, right? Whether they listen or not in that moment, it's seeds being planted so that we can model it. And so hopefully we break out of this cycle of like generations and generations of disassociating with these emotions that make us callous or make us, like either impatient or not being able to truly enjoy. Because I think that's what God has for Christians. He wants us to enjoy life and life in abundance. And so many times we're preached the prosperity gospel of life in abundance. But the reality is life, like Paul said, like it has so many burdens. Like it has, and I don't mean like emotional burdens, but it's things are going to happen. We're going to be persecuted one way or another. Like we're going to go just through the natural cycles of life where there's good and there's bad, and we're all getting closer to death. Like there is bad and good things about life. And I think this is what truly gets us to live life in abundance.
Yeah.
That we don't just X out one part and say, I don't want to feel this, because when we do that, then we can't truly enjoy that dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
And he wants us to enjoy it, but we can't just ignore like, oh, everything's fine, you guys. Because I just imagine the opposite. What if we have that Thanksgiving dinner and there is chaos ensuing and we don't stop and say like, okay, this is what's happening. But if we ignore it, we kind of look like all these like crazy like clown people, like everything's okay. Look, we're on the show, put on the show. Let's eat this food. And we're all sitting there like, is anyone going to say anything about like what's happening? And like we can't enjoy. Versus there's Thanksgiving dinner and we're like, and I think of my mom, like literally in Thanksgiving, she says, the reality is I'm going through cancer and God is testing us. And it's being said, like, this is the truth. But the good is that God has chosen us to perfect his trials through us, to perfect our faith, to perfect and that is way more like we're like, okay, this is it, but we can enjoy now, like what we have.
Yeah. And it produces healthiness when you can process it all, when you accept the whole picture.
Yeah.
And as much as we want to be like, we're in a great season, nothing is going bad. I mean, anyone who says that, I challenge them because your life is not perfect.
Yeah.
There's things that, are off, and it's okay. Process them, accept them, acknowledge them, like go through the emotions, and it's exactly like you said, like there's like a new level of health and peace that comes from you just being like, this is what's happening. There's enemies around me, and here's the names of the enemies, and this is how they make me feel. But when you choose to focus on what's in front of you, then you say, although I may be surrounded by the enemies, and there's a psalm, right, that says, 1,000 might fall to my left and 10,000 to my right, but they won't be able to like touch me, which is paraphrase, right? But something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, the reality is there might be 1,000 enemies coming this way and 10,000 this way. But when I choose to focus on the greatness of God and what he has presented to me, I choose to believe that he is powerful beyond measures, that he is the King of Kings, and he will prevail.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. And I think in some of us, I don't know about you, but I kind of grew up like, you never complain about your parents and you never complain about God. That's forbidden. And I grew up like that.
Yeah.
Like you never say nothing back to your parents and you never say nothing back to God. Like, just, it is what it is. And so if you are like me, then it might feel weird to, in the reality of like, this part of my life really sucks. Because it's almost like when you write that, you're kind of complaining about God. Like, God, why do you have me in this place?
Yeah.
Because in reality, he is over everything, right? We have free will, but some of the things we don't have control of. And so you're like, okay, God, you had some hand in this, like you're trying to teach me something. Yeah, but I mean, this kind of sucks, like you losing your mother, or the things that I went through. It's just like, yeah, that part of my life sucked. And if I didn't have to go through it, I wish I didn't have to go through it.
No.
And it's kind of sounds like Jesus before he got crucified. God, any way that this could just, not happen? But if it's your will, I guess, let's do this thing, And so you might feel weird writing that. But then what I would say to that is, I would kind of challenge you of, do you think that God cannot handle your complaints? Like, it's exactly like you said, David, in many Psalms, started off, God, what the heck is your problem, dude? Like, where are you? Like, you've forsaken me. Like, he's going through all this list of complaints, and at the very end, he goes, but you're the breath in my lungs. You're the King of Kings. You're amazing, and I love you. All right, see ya. Until the next time, But in reality, it's just like, do we feel like God can't handle our complaints? And because I come from that background, it's like taboo to complain about God, or taboo to say like, this part of my life sucks. And just behind that thought, be like, God, like, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah.
But picture a father and the child goes up to the father and has a complaint about the father. Let's say if Elijah had a complaint about me, like, what am I going to do? Am I going to be like, how dare you have a complaint about me? You're exiled. There's no way.
Yeah.
As a good, loving father, what am I going to do? I'm going to listen to him. I'm going to take in his complaint and talk it out and be like, guess what? You complaining about me does not make me love you any less. And if me as a human can do that, just imagine like how God is. Like, he's like, complain about me all you want. I'm not moving.
Yeah.
I'm here with you. Complain about me all you want. But at the end of your complaints, I'm ready to work through everything that you want to work through. Complain all you want. You're guys still getting showered with love. And that kind of like, I talked about it today, actually, in therapy, where yesterday when you were like, Elijah did this and this and this and this and this, and you told me exactly what he did in front of him. And I put myself in his shoes, actually. And I'm like, he's automatically thinking my dad is going to be against me. He's going to be with my mom. And that's why you saw what I did. Like, I grabbed him. I'm like, I'm on your side. And the kid just started crying. And that's exactly, I mean, again, if a human being can do that, just imagine what God would do. And I really love that moment because I was like, you made a mistake. You're going to get your consequence. But I'm going to show you that I unconditionally love you.
Yeah.
And that's in itself powerful. And for some of us, it's even hard to love ourselves. And we go back to the self-reflection, and we go back to the reality, and we go back to the focus. Some of us have a hard time self-reflecting. Some of us have a hard time even writing the reality because we don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And some of us is because we don't even like ourselves. Like, how many of us can look ourselves in the mirror and be like, I like you, dude. You're a good guy. I was actually listening to a podcast a while back, and it was this older gentleman. I forgot what his name is. But he's like, over the age, I've learned to love myself. And he's like, if I met me, I'd have a drink with me. If I met me, I'd have a cigar with me. I'd talk with me, you know? And how many of us can look ourselves in the mirror and be like, I would do the same thing. I like myself. And it's because some of us have been conditioned that same way I was telling you about with the white paper and the dot. All we see is the dot.
Yeah.
We messed up. Today I messed up as a husband. I'm a horrible husband. Always been a horrible husband. Today I messed up as a father. I'm a horrible father. Messed up. I suck. Like, I have no business being a father. Like, I should run away or whatever. Like, but if we can be brave enough to do that self-reflection, to write out all that reality, then in that process, above it all, you're going to learn to love who God made you. And in that process, learn to love yourself. Because you're going to start seeing, yeah, there's not so good. And you're going to be like triggered to like, oh, I'm horrible. Like, I don't even want to do this. Some of you guys might not even want to do it because you don't want to face the reality. But it's important because through that, you will see the good in you. I might have screwed up as a husband today. But have I always screwed up? No. I fall short of giving you words of affirmation. But do I always fall short of that? No. I'm starting to be better. And I'm starting to try to be more intentional. And I'm starting to try to lift you up. And I'm starting to try to make you more secure. I sometimes forget. But does that mean I'm a horrible husband? No. And that's when you start giving yourself grace. And you start accepting that you deserve grace. That God's given you grace. And so it's a beautiful process to be able to go through that. Because you start seeing all the goodness of God. Maybe it was hard for you to love yourself. Maybe it was hard for you to receive grace or to give yourself grace or to accept grace. Maybe it was hard for you to forgive yourself, to accept forgiveness. There's so much things that I relate with in that regard where it's just like now through this process, I'm learning to accept grace, to give myself grace, to forgive myself, to accept forgiveness, to see the good in me, to look at myself in the mirror and give myself words of affirmation is not easy because I don't come from that. But as I'm doing it, I'm like, I start seeing that now I'm not doing things for the sake of making other people happy, but I'm doing things to make myself proud. And in doing so, I know that I'm living out the purpose that God's given me. And as you start relieving yourself of the chains and relieving yourself of caring so much about the opinions of others, where you have the freedom to live out the purpose that God's given you.
And part of the purpose I think that we all have is to share more about God. And in recognizing our weaknesses and writing the harsh realities of life, that because we said they're going to be harsh, in writing that, I think it makes us build a bridge to others, to saying like, hey, you're not alone. Because I feel like so many Christians, like we're called to evangelize and we're called to spread the gospel, but we forget to like humanize ourselves and our struggles.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of bridging that gap, it's like we put walls and like our life is perfect with God. God is good all the time. God is good. And that they can't relate to us. And we need to remember that God himself became flesh, which is so weak. Like our flesh and bones, we could die easily, we could get hurt easily, like we're fragile, and became so dependent on water, on food. And he felt he was perfect. He was perfect, but he felt the fallen world and what humans feel, like our dependency, because he was there to bridge that gap. And I think we need to remember that our weaknesses, our harsh realities, not to shy away from them, but use it to bridge the gap to others. Use it to bridge the gap to our next generation. Use it to bridge the gap to our younger self and heal from it. Like we need to know that I think they've been stigmatized like bad, stay away from it, nothing good can come from it, or it's scary, but they can be a powerful tool if we don't shy away from it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think for some of us, it will be difficult at first. But as you're going through this process, and if you really embrace this process of seeing the reality, doing the self-reflection, choosing what to focus on, seeing the blessings, you're going to gain confidence.
Yeah.
You're going to gain confidence in who God has made you. You're going to gain a firm foundation where it doesn't depend on people's opinions and stuff like that. And as you root yourself in God in that way, it's like then you start to gain that confidence of, I can share my vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Because you're becoming healthier. Your roots are really into God and the stream that he's provided, you know? And yeah, I think as time goes on, it will get easier.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if you guys have met any people like that, but I have, where you're just like, dang, you're so confident. You're so like, you can just share everything. And like, your mom was like that.
Yeah.
Your mom was just like, oh, here's my whole life. Like, here you go. And she, like, exactly what you're saying, like she bridged the gap with so many people. Like that lady knew exactly how to connect with everybody.
Yeah.
Just had a gift for it. But yeah, anything else you want to add?
No, that I'm proud of you, because whether you are conscious of it or not, like you've been vulnerable on this podcast even before you went into therapy and even like sharing about it. So you're steps ahead, like more than you give, I think, yourself credit for.
Well, it's hard for myself to give myself credit.
But that's why I'm here to help you. I give you credit.
But yeah, I really hope, like I said, in the next day or two, we'll be posting the journal idea on the Instagram. You guys can follow along. It'll break down, what the origin is. It'll break down the reality. It'll break down the enemies. It'll break down the focus, the blessing. And then at the very end, it'll show you kind of like an example of what it could look like. But you can make it your own. And like I said, Grace will not let up on me. And she's already told you guys to not let up on me.
Yes, please bug him.
I think in the next couple of weeks, we should have
it on Amazon,
a better everyday focus journal on Amazon that you can order.
And we will make it affordable.
Yeah. I have to figure that out. But yeah, for sure. I mean,
No one's dropping 50 on a gin.
No. I'm going to, honestly, I don't know how the structure of all that works, but I think I can make it like 20 or $25 or whatever. Like it really depends on like, it's paper copy, hard copy. I would like a nice hard cover. Honestly, I would like a leather cover, but I don't know if you could do that on Amazon. But
no.
Yeah, we're gonna do that. Thanks to my wife that pushes me. It is a good idea, and it would save you guys some writing if you guys really want to do it. You guys can buy it and just have everything like the reality, the reality is the enemy, the focus, the blessing on there, and you could just write in it every single day and just watch how your life starts to change as you start just accepting all of this, embracing it, processing it, allowing God to be in the middle of the process, and just notice yourself just start opening up and gaining all this confidence and all this healthiness, really. So once again, we thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We love you guys so much. We hope that this episode was a blessing to you that can help you be better. We believe that these last 2 episodes are very powerful in regards to being better every day. I know we could easily come up here and be like, here are the 5 ways that you can be successful today, or here are 10 ways that you can make more money today. But being better every day is way more than just success and money. Before all that, you need to build the character. And if you're not in a healthy place, then you'll never have the character to be able to handle the money that you want to handle, or the success that you want to have, or, you know, whatever it is that you see for your future. Like it's important to deal with all the core stuff and then flourish from there. And so, thank you again for taking the time to listen. We love you guys. Praying for you guys, and we will see you guys on the next episode.
Bye.
See ya.